Hey, welcome back. So today we're going to go into part 7 of my testimony. I'm sorry that I was off for a couple of days, so there was quite a bit of a break. I was having technical difficulty with my technology and wasn't able to record properly, and or I had to keep redoing the recording. So this is like the 5th or 6th time I'm recording. But recap from the last time on part 6. I go into how I'm taking a break from business, even how I'm working at a diner that I go through a lot of hardship with. There was a workplace romance that took place at that diner when I was working, and then evidently the hard struggle that I faced with not only coworkers but customers, while still dealing with the man I was working with, and the spiritual attacks that I even occurred during my time at the diner. So I just experienced a whole bunch of hardship from every which angle, that to the point I had to leave. I went and got myself a different job, and it was while I was at that different job I eventually started my journey with got back into being more focused with the Lord and building my relationship with the Lord. And I ended up going on a 40-day social media fast. And it was while that I was on that fast, I got introduced to listening to Lisa Bevere and her podcast, and particularly The Fight for Female, which propelled me to continue to grow in my relationship with the Lord. But primarily, it really did heal me in the areas of my life in the sense of womanhood, and also got me to grow in biblical femininity. And it was in the midst of that 40-day fast, I eventually got into listening to John Bevere, which he really even helped me grow spiritually, going further with looking at spiritual gifts with his book, You Are Called, in particular, which goes into 2025, how I got to grow in developing a holy fear of the Lord, which I really didn't have before. So going into 2025, with everything that was going on, I do start off the year with my car breaking down, which was not the best thing that anyone wants to go through, especially as you're going into New Year, because people believe that when you start off the New Year good or bad, it's going to affect the rest of your year. So I'm just struggling with the fact that my car breaks down. I have to get it paid for, and I'm struggling with money. But that was actually how the beginning of my year started. But going further, I continue listening to John Bevere, because while I'm listening to John Bevere, I am transitioning from a 40-day fast that took place at the end of 2024, going into a 21-day Daniel fast that takes place in January, and I was doing it with my church also. It was during this time of fasting I was learning more from John Bevere, and particularly how to pray. I never knew until I was listening to John Bevere that prayer is more of a dialogue and not a monologue. It's not all about me, but it's a conversation between the Lord and me. And I was also learning how to have a holy fear of the Lord, which I got to listen to videos on Messenger X on the awe of God. So the combination of learning how to pray, developing a holy fear for the Lord, really did put me into a position to grow my relationship with the Lord. And on top of that, I was fasting. So you can definitely say I grew spiritually, that I actually got to experience God's presence coming into, me going into God's presence. So in the morning, I would wake up and I would go and have my morning time with the Lord. And I usually had this morning time in my car. And I kid you not, the growth that I experienced, God's presence was truly in the car with me. And not only was his presence in the car with me, I had a journal where I would write to the Lord in it. And it was like there was a flip. He was writing to me. Of course, I was the one writing it. But there would be a certain point after I would read my Bible, God just starts talking to me. And he's like downloading information into me. So he's teaching me more about having a relationship with him, what he's like. He was also confronting me in areas in which I needed to repent and turn away from. So there's more healing, there was more repentance and accountability taking place. But he was even teaching me about how the spiritual world operates also. And he gave me new ways of thinking of what happened in the garden, like in Genesis, which that happened on later on in the year. But it's examples like this that God was teaching me more about him and teaching me more about heaven. Because it was in this process I started learning how to release heaven on earth. So while I'm going through this transition and this growth process, eventually the Lord wants me to go back to the diner. So this is still happening in the beginning of the year. And of course, I'm already like, I don't want to go back. And the reason why I don't want to go back is because I remember all the turmoil that I faced, all the hardship, but in particularly what made it worse was the spiritual battle that was attached to it. And it was because of all that spiritual battle, I eventually got closer to understanding Ephesians 6 when it comes to understanding that we don't battle against flesh and blood alone, but against principalities. So what made everything I faced at that diner extremely hard was a spiritual activity, and I really didn't want to go through that again. But simultaneously, I remembered the disobedience that I have done. And in the areas where I did disobey, there were consequences that came from it. Now, of course, evidently, where God wanted me to be, I eventually ended up there. But it would have been a lot easier of a transition if I had just obeyed from the beginning. So I decided to obey the Lord even though I didn't want to. I chose to obey because I didn't want to disobey him again. I didn't want to go through it again. So I eventually went back to the diner, and at the time I was only working part-time, so which was only Monday night into Tuesday morning. So that was a 9 p.m. shift to 8 a.m. So like literally long night while I was still having my day job. So I'm working 2 jobs, and even during this process I'm working 2 jobs. I'm also starting my business. So this is like the second business starting up, and we got a whole new foundation, a different viewpoint of what we're trying to go for. Because it was during the 40-day fast, I started thinking about business differently and started having the groundwork where God was more in the center of it, which I failed at doing the first time when I had my first business. So this one I actually worked on making sure I had a good foundation of God in the center of it. Then going like closer into the spring, like we're transitioning from the winter into the spring, God started putting on my heart to call my mom, which we had not spoken in like 2 years. And when I called her, he wanted me primarily to let her know that I had forgiven. I had already forgiven her 2 years prior, and there were some things that would come up. I would continuously kept being in the habit of forgiving her. But this time God wanted me to actually call her, tell her that I had forgiven her, which I did. I wasn't trying to stay on the phone long. I called her and I let her know that I forgive her and that I love her. And I continued on from there. Eventually during the summer, I did the same thing with my grandfather as well. By this point, after I speak with my mom, I'm still working 2 jobs, and I'm still also working and building the foundation of my business. And then my car breaks down one day after when I'm coming home from my main job during the day. And no, we're going to backtrack a little bit. Before my car breaks down, God eventually wants me to start working at the diner with more hours. Which, again, because of the struggle I went through, and this time I will be working with the gentleman with the workplace romance, I really didn't want to work and then also have to work with him too. Not only was there that spiritual battle that I really didn't want to face, there was also the fact that when I work with him and whenever he's upset or going through something, it makes my job 10 times harder because then I gotta also deal with him while still working. And I did not want to go through that again also. But yet again, that the reality of I don't want to disobey the Lord again, and I wanted to be obedient. It was that morning after when I had my morning prayer time with the Lord. I went over to the diner and I spoke with him about me having more hours there at the diner. So I ended up working at the diner, not just all night Monday night, but also Friday night and Saturday night. So I was working the overnight shift. But this time it was around the weekend. When I started working there, eventually my car breaks down. And it's when I'm coming home from my main job, I'm like literally on my way home, finished work, and my car starts leaking antifreeze and starts smoking, that I literally had to have my car towed home. Because I experienced this, I had no idea what to do, especially even though I have extra money coming in, due to the bills that I had, and I had a very huge traveling expense with my main job. I really didn't even have money to go get my car fixed. And because I didn't have money to get my car fixed, I really didn't know what I could do. So I had to contact my manager, let her know that my car had broken down and I don't have the money to go get my car fixed. We came up with a solution so that I could get the money I needed to get a car, and she set me up to have a rental car. The rental car would allow me to work the extra stores that I needed to work so that I can build up the money to go get my car fixed. And unfortunately, when we had that plan going, it was like around on Thursday of that week of me just working hard trying to raise up and build up the money. I get sick, and I'm saying I come down with this huge, like this fever that I could barely walk, barely move. I was just weak to my core. I remember I was mostly sleeping. Not only was I mostly sleeping, I could barely stand when I needed to stand. So when I got sick, that actually messed up everything else I needed to do. I had to call out of work for my main job and for my overnight job because I was horribly sick. And it was on next week and I remember it was a Tuesday that I had to come to a real decision. What do I do? And that real decision was, do I keep this job or not? The reality of me keeping the job would be very difficult because I did not have a car. That job requirement is for me to have reliable transportation, which I did not have. And I also didn't want to give up that main job because that main job paid between $18 to $21 an hour, depending on which store that I was working. So that one did bring in more income versus at the diner, I was only making $12 an hour. This was a very hard decision. It was a decision I did not want to make. It was something that that job I didn't want to give up because it brought in more income. But that's when I had to pray on it and said, Lord, clearly I can't keep this job. So I'm going to quit. If I got to continue working at the diner and accept rides from people, if I got to do Uber, I'll do that. I asked the Lord for help, that He's with me. And so I gave my resignation letter on that Tuesday in the morning. Later on that night, that very same day, I'm going through my emails, like before I go to bed, clearing out my emails. And I get an email from my credit card company that my credit limit has been extended an extra $3,000, which I was stunned, shocked, happy, and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. I went to my best friend. She of course went off to go to bed, and I'm sitting there telling her like, look what God did. I quit my job today, and He provided a way for me to drive my car. And of course, she was shocked, like that's interesting. So she's watching in this experience that I'm going through, and she knew I had to make that hard decision of quitting my day job. But it was then I was like, okay, Lord, you really want me to quit working at Winston. And it was like, okay, I'm gonna just keep moving forward. But with the extra $3,000 that was on my credit card, the very next day, that Wednesday, I had my car towed to my mechanic. I told them this is what happened. And I said, I got the money for it. I just need this car fixed. That's the main goal. That's my main focus. And so Wednesday, my car got towed. And Thursday, they found the problem. The problem. And they started working on it. Now, because of this car had a major problem, and I knew that was a major repair that needed to get done. And I probably wouldn't have gotten my car back until Monday. That's what I was guessing. But by the grace of God, I was able to go pick up my car on Friday. And I was shocked when they called me, because when they called me, I didn't fully wake up yet. I was sleeping in, giving myself that extra rest because I knew I was going to go to work at the diner. And when they called me, they told me that my car was ready to get picked up. And I'm like, I'm on my way. So I took an Uber to the mechanic. I wasn't able to ask my best friend for a ride to the mechanic because she was working. So I took an Uber all the way to my mechanic, paid for everything I needed to get paid for, and I was driving back home with my car done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what the Lord did. Even that day, when I was going back home, I stopped by my best friend's job, and basically showed her like my car's fixed. I got my car back. Cause she even looked at me like, aren't you not supposed to be driving right now? I'm like, my car got fixed, it was done, and I got to go pick it up. In that situation, I learned how, because that was a teachable moment. Not only was it a moment for me to learn how to be obedient, but it was also a teachable moment in how God was teaching me that He wanted to take care of me, and not me have the mindset of me just trying to take care of everything. And I learned in that moment how God can take care of me better than I can. Because not only did He provide me with the extra $3,000 that I needed, that extra $3,000 not only helped me out with taking Ubers, it also helped me pay for the repair that needed to get done, the tow that also needed that Wednesday, because my car did need to get towed. Because like with everything that I needed to pay for, I still there was money left over. So God didn't just provide exactly what I needed. He provided more than enough. Because even with what was left, I was even able to pay like some extra bills, some extra debts that was there. So God showed up and showed out in that moment. And it was then I learned just how better of a caregiver He is. So going forward, I'm working at the diner as my main job, and I'm still working on my business, and I'm still growing. Well, I'm still growing and looking at the Lord as my provider, and not me trying to be my own provider. So there's a lesson of learning how to let the Lord take care of me that's still going on moving forward, because He really did end up bringing back a realization of how He was with me even when I was at the diner. So I go back and I'm working at the diner. Eventually, and this is like we're going into the summer, The guy that there was the workplace romance with, he quits. So he puts in like a notice to quit. He ends up having to do a month's notice so that the restaurant can find someone to replace him. And I remember having this like emotional breakdown. Of course, this breakdown was only before the Lord, that no one else even knew about it. And it came into reality of, in this emotional breakdown, that not only would I probably not see him again, but also the reality of, because I was so afraid of getting hurt again by being around him, I was cold and I was hard towards him. I wouldn't let him even get close to me. I would be high, be respectful, but I wouldn't even look to him, not even really as a friend. Because I really was strongly just trying to keep myself from being hurt. And it was in that moment, I kind of got like the aha moment of, I don't need to be afraid of getting hurt. I need to be able to love the way that Jesus loved. And that would have been a good reflection for him to even see that even in the midst of me going through hurt and pain, I'm still reflecting Christ in my actions towards him. Which, of course, I realized like that was a very good, huge moment, especially since this guy is not Christian. He's a Muslim. It would have been really great to show the love of Jesus Christ through my actions. So there was that emotional breakdown. There was a healing moment, the aha moment, the decision moving forward on how to respond and react with him, which really did help, because I even learned how to be more honest and even more vulnerable in what I was doing. And because I got a better response from him. So for example, it was like a holiday that was taking place, and he was asking people to come in on Sunday night to, like, for the extra hands, extra help. So I was one of the people he asked, and when I came in that night, I went to the restroom, and then there was a server that was complaining about him in the bathroom, and she was kind of loud, and I knew exactly who she was talking about. And in this moment, I'm sitting there wondering, like, do I say something? Do I not say something? Which I did, but I took the posture of, hey, look, you got to be careful about what you say around these people. You can't trust everyone here. Next time, like, have a conversation, just not where people can hear. Because if I can hear you, someone else can hear you too. So, but me and her, we ended up having a conversation, like a long conversation. And because I'm sitting here having this conversation with her, the coup de grace of this conversation, the fact that I was even talking with her, was that everyone knew that I did not like her. I didn't like her because her reputation, her character was very disreputable. And professionally speaking, it caused a strong sense of distrust. So I didn't like how she handles certain things at work, and the fact that there would even be like comments on how she treated customers. So there was a strong dislike. But even in this moment, because you can tell clearly I had spent time with the Lord, so my character was different, that I was even willing to go and talk to her. Me and her are talking. We are talking off to the side for a while, and everyone sees it. But then once we're finished talking, everyone starts treating me weird, like I did something wrong. And it's like, what the heck is all this going on for? So I got servers that are treating me weird. Even the guy, he's treating me weird. And I remember feeling how angry about it and about to start going off, but then I was like, wait a minute, hold up. I'm just gonna go home. So I went up to him and asked him if I could go home. And be mindful also, in the past, I will always sit there and be like, can I go home? I want to go home now. I don't want to be here. And he will always tell me no. But this time I actually said, may I go home? everyone has been treating me weird since I spoke with this server. I don't like it, and when I told him that everyone's been treating me weird, I even pointed out how he's treating me weird and how I didn't like it. May I go home? Because I was honest and vulnerable in this situation, he actually said yes, that I could go home. And he even apologized to me, which was the first time. I wish I could have recorded it and have it like an scrapbook kind of moment, because I've never gotten an apology from him. But he actually apologized and allowed me to go home early because I wasn't going to try and take any of that from anybody. That's not why I was even there. So from there, we got that settled. I grew and was maturing. From that point, eventually he does quit and we get a new manager. The new manager's alright. There were things I liked about him, things I didn't like about him. He is like a respectable manager. One of the great things I did like about this manager was that I did not have to do extra work with him around, which was what I thought when he first started working there. But then eventually there were too many. He was distracted a lot, and in his leadership style, he was not disciplined. He wasn't organized. So if he goes off doing something, worrying about something he really shouldn't have been worrying about, I had to sit there and handle everything else, which sucked for me, and I ended up having to still do a whole lot of running around. But other than that, he wasn't a bad manager. He just needed to be focused and structured. Then eventually going like end of summer into the fall, there are tensions rising with another server that I was working with, in particular on Monday nights. And she had already started before everything else, but it really becomes more heightened towards the end. And it got to a point that I had went to the restaurant manager and I spoke with him and I told him that I can't stand working with her. She's hostile. She's also someone in the past, before I quit before I quit the first time, she's thrown food at me. Even because the restaurant manager, he came and told me that if they're leaving with food, they have to pay for it. Of course, I'll give them a discount, but they had to pay for their food if they're leaving. They can't just take it and go. So when I was told that, and I upheld it, and I upheld it with everyone, she got mad and even threw her food at me. Now, luckily, the food didn't open up and spill at me, but she technically threw her food at me, and I had witnesses there. This is someone who has had continuous attitude. If she's going through something or having a bad day, she takes it out on everyone. Not only that, she was also a server that was unreliable. She would come in later than what her scheduled time would be and would leave earlier than what her scheduled time for her to leave would be. And she wasn't even someone who did a lot of work also. So from there, tension started to rise. If I'm sitting there asking her a calm question like, "Are you leaving right now?" and I need to confirm it, she would have an attitude with me on the floor, and like there was no need for the argument. There's no need for the hostility. So by this point, when I'm speaking with the restaurant manager, I'm asking if I can fire her, and I'm even willing to look for a server to replace her. I'll look for the person, train them, and fire her. And I even explained with him, which he did agree on. He agreed that it was okay for me to fire her and find someone else to replace her. I even mentioned to him that if for any reason he lets her come back, I'm not working Monday nights again. And he understood that when that happened. From there, I actually started looking for a server to replace her for Monday nights. Then, as I was looking in the process, the new overnight manager, he hired someone, and to give her more hours, he put her on Monday night. So I didn't have to go ahead and find a new server. But eventually, at first I was going to let her train for like 2 weeks, see how things go, and then fire the other server. But I saw that the new server needed some more time, so I let her continue training and getting used to everything that was going on in the diner, and in particular learning the menu. Then there was one day when I woke up in preparation to go to work. The Holy Spirit told me tonight's the night to fire her. And so that night I did exactly that. This was about a month later from when the new server started working. So some time had definitely gone by. But the Holy Spirit had put into my spirit, it's time to fire her, let her go tonight. So that's exactly what I did. When I let her go, I told her, you've been let go. You can either finish out your shift tonight, or you can leave. Either way, but tonight is your last night. When that happened, of course she was upset, but she didn't go off in front of me. The next day in the morning, she did try and come by, and I remember I saw her drove by, but she kept going because the main manager wasn't there. But I found out that she was brought back, and it was someone else that informed me that she came in yelling for her job back. So she came in fuss fighting, arguing for her to have her job back, and because of it, she was allowed to come back. When I found out, I called the restaurant manager and said, like, why was she brought back? At first I was texting him and he wouldn't respond. Then I sent the text that I'm no longer working Monday nights. That's when he called me saying that, no, for me to work Monday nights. And we came up with a temporary solution that I work this coming Monday and she won't be there. So she was given a day off on that Monday. So from that day to Monday, I had this decision on, do I keep on working with this server who's not only been a problem, but also if she was willing to throw food at me, she's also willing to fight me. Do I really want to put myself in this kind of situation? And I was prayerful on it too. When it came to it, the final decision was, no, I'm not going to keep going through this. She's been a problem. Everyone knows that she's been a problem. She's been a problem for the previous overnight manager because he first threatened that he was going to quit if she was still here. And that was when she got the consequence of only working Monday nights and not any other days that she was previously working. So when it came to me speaking with the restaurant manager again, I told him I'm no longer working Monday nights. If you want, I brought to his attention that I said before, if you bring her back, I'm not working Monday nights. I'm not going to do it. And he agreed. Later on that same week, he tried to negotiate with me saying I work Tuesday night overnight and the new overnight manager will work Monday night, the night I used to work. I thought about it, and when I was more on the yes side, I kept having this feeling like, wait a minute, this person, the issue that's there has not changed. And it seemed like there was more work to try and keep a server that didn't do the right thing. And there was more catering towards that person instead of just letting them go. Because if they had let them go and stood by my decision, there wouldn't have been a whole changeover in the management, whoever would be managing Monday nights. I would have still worked Monday nights. It was then I addressed that this wasn't right. I'm not going to work Monday night. I'm not going to work Tuesday night. I'm not doing that. This person has been a problem. Everyone knows that she's been a problem. This is just not, it's not right. It's not right for me to have to be moved around and that person be catered to and they're the problem. So that was that scenario. So I did not go with go forward with any negotiations. I did not work or manage another night because of it. The interesting thing about it was, once it was all done, I actually heard it was put in my spirit that I wasn't going to be there much longer anyway. And I knew that like relatively soon. And when I say soon, I'm not talking where soon could be like a year from then or going into the next year. I knew it was going to be immediately soon that I wasn't going to be working there any longer. I didn't know exactly when, but I just knew I was going to be done working there. Then like 2 weeks approximately later came. I'm working my weekend, so by this point I was already working Thursday, Friday, Saturday from the previous manager because he needed help on Thursday nights, so I started coming in on Thursday nights. So this week that I quit, Thursday I came into work, there were no issues. I'm just doing my normal Thursday night shift, and I just leave. There's no problems, no issues. But it was Friday night. I'm coming in because I've been working on my business like all week, and particularly this particular day, I've been working on a website. And as I'm working on my website, I'm looking at everything that's happening around me at the diner. I'm paying attention to the customers. I'm paying attention to the servers, and particularly how this one server and the overnight manager are kind of going at it a little bit because he told her to go home because she came in late, and he's been on her about the time of which she came in. And so I'm just watching it. This is like an out of body, in body experience. I'm sitting there watching everything, and for some reason, it's like I can't take it anymore. And then there's this moment. I'm just sitting there like I need a moment to myself. Which I spoke with my manager. He allowed me to go out to my car just to have this moment to myself. And as I'm sitting in the car, I'm sitting there like, what is this? What am I going through? And in this moment, like the Holy Spirit is illuminating, time to go. It's time to leave. And I'm kind of sitting there like, really? It's time to go? Like, I got nothing else lined up. I got no other stream of income. But I'm feeling it more and more in my spirit. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to quit. And the moment I'm deciding and agreeing to go and quit, then there's this wave of strong fear that is like, that's over me, that comes over me and is rushing in. So I have this type of fear of trembling. And the last time I felt that type of fear, it was dealing with my mom. And so it came like rushing back. So I knew there was a spiritual activity going on in this moment that it was time for me to go. So I had to pray and fight through this wave of fear that was coming and that was overwhelming me, which I did. The moment I quit, it all went away because I did what actually was time to do. I had to do it. Of course, everyone was shocked that I just left on the spot. They thought did something happen for me to quit. And it's like, no, it's just time to go. And so that's exactly what happened. When I was done, when I left, I clocked out. I went to my best friend and told her what happened. Like, I quit. She's like, what happened? Why did you quit? And I'm like, it was time to go. And I told her in more detail what I was going through spiritually for why I quit. But everyone knew I was done and I quit. So this time when I quit, I didn't have any job lined up. Even though I was working on my business, I did not have a stream of income coming in. So far, the only thing I was doing was designing Christian streetwear. And I was working on a website so that I could sell the Christian streetwear online. But overall, I didn't have an income coming in. And I knew that when I was at the diner, that was the last time I was actually going to be working for somebody. So about a month later, the Lord is putting on my heart to contact my mom, to talk to my mom. I had no real reason to talk to her. He just wanted me to talk to her. And the day when I did talk to her, he kind of got me into thinking about our dog Gigi, which my mom had gotten our dog Gigi when I was 14 in middle school, and I'm 30 now. So this dog has been around for like a long time, 16 years, and she's still alive. She's still kicking. And like during the conversation with my mom, she calls our dog Gigi a geriatric puppy. So she still has her puppy-like behavior even though she's older. Her bark, you can tell, is older. So I call my mom, and at first my mom didn't pick up, and I was like, "Yes, I'm out of it. I did my part. I don't have to talk to her. Yay!" The crazy thing was that an hour later, my mom called back. I'm like, "Dang it!" But I talked to my mom, and the first time in my life, we actually had a 5-hour conversation. I have never spoke to my mom on the phone for that long. The only times I would actually have a long conversation with her was when we were face to face. But when it came to talking over the phone, the most we might have spoken over the phone was like 10 to 15 minutes. That's it. We never spoke long over the phone. And when we talked, we kind of was like, for me, she primarily got to hear how my life has everything that has happened in my life. She found out that I was living in Jersey, which I came from Delaware. I lived most of my life in Delaware. That's where she resides. And when I got kicked out of my apartment, there was only one person who was willing to let me stay with them, and that was my best friend. So she found out I was living in Jersey with my best friend. And she even got to hear about the workplace romance and the things that I went through. And even how I started up a new business and what the focus was of it. So she got to hear how I've grown, how life has taken. I was even growing spiritually, which even when I would give her the revelations, that some of the revelations that God had given me, she did not agree with. And it's like, you know what? Oh, well, that means it's not meant for your ears. Oh, well, I'm not going to fuss, fight, or argue. I know what God taught me. I'm not arguing or fighting about it. And we're kind of talking. She can hear where my life has, even with all the things I went through, I had more joy, and I was centered and just on the right path for everything that has happened in my life. Going towards the end of the phone conversation, she starts getting into and emotionally pressuring me into getting a job. So in other words, even though I told her where God was taking me and what some of the visions and that God was reminding me that I had, even like that I about going forward into my future, my mom is pressuring me into getting a job, and she even explains how there's this particular government part of the government that was hiring. And I'm listening, and I'm like, I already knew I wasn't going to do that. I knew I was going to stick with what the Lord had told me, even if I don't like the situation that I'm in. But at first I was just going to like nod along, agree, like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. But I then it was like in my spirit, like I had to say something. And that's when I had to tell my mom, respectfully, I'm not going to do that. And I said I was going to be obedient to the Lord and trust Him. So after I made that comment, my mom continues on pressuring and reasoning why I need to go get a job. She bringing up things that I would need just to take care of myself because she knew I really didn't have money. The reality of like health insurance, dental insurance, me just being able to take care of myself, I need to be able to do. And after every reasoning, every rationale she's bringing up and all the pressure, I'm just standing there calmly like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what the Lord told me to do. I'm going to be obedient to the Lord. By this point, obedience had been the main lesson of everything that I went through. And a good portion of the time when I disobeyed, it wasn't just based off of my own reasoning, but the reasoning of my mom or even somebody else. So by this point, I had it ingrained within me to obey the Lord and stick with his obedience. Because when I obey, there is covering and protection in obeying the Lord. So this is like going back and forth. I have no idea how long it was. It did feel like a long time. And to my surprise, she actually relents and she goes off on an encouraging note, saying that I look forward to seeing what the Lord does in your life. It looks like you're on to something, and which I have no idea if she really believes that or not. But I remember getting off the phone, and the moment I hung up and got off the phone, it was placed in my spirit that I had passed the test. And it was a triumph, victory, a joy that was in my spirit, as if like the Holy Spirit was throwing a party in my chest, because the thing that I had struggled to do, and part of the reason why God had to allow me to go through 5 years of suffering, I had completed and I had done. So there was that. I got free, like from the bondage of my mom in that moment, because I obeyed the Lord. That wasn't the only thing that I got free from that day, and not the only thing that I was victorious in. About another month later, if it wasn't another month, it was like 2 weeks later. Like God gave me a little window of a break. God gives me this dream/memory of something I did back when I was in college. And God was addressing a lustful behavior that I've had and that has followed me for a long time. And in the memory, he shows how when I was in my dorm, my dorm was being checked by an RA, and the RA was really cute. I had put myself in a position where he would have had to come closer to me while I was in my bed, and that wasn't right. Now, because I did feel guilty for it, I immediately created an excuse saying that I had him come to my bed for me to sign the paper, so because I was wearing shorts, they had red up, and I didn't want to expose myself in that way, but that was not even the truth. So God had me deal with the truth and held me accountable. But we had to go after why not only did I did that, but how it even got there. So this was like a span of a weekend, and during this weekend, I'm on a social media fast, and I knew this would be the best time for me to do a social media fast because my best friend is working these days, and she's working long days. So I had no interruption while I'm while I'm on this fast and while I'm having this moment. So while I'm battling and understanding how I got introduced to dealing with lust, and because I've dealt with lust for like years, like I would probably say coming out of childhood, it's been with me and has been following me. But God revealed the source of where it came from, and He revealed a memory that I actually had, and it was it was like one weekend, one morning. Me and my siblings are up, and I'm going with my brother to my mom's room, and I did not know that my mom had a guest, and that guest is my brother's dad. Now, I didn't see anything, and I'm thankful I did not see anything, but I walked in on them together, and I immediately left, and I knew like that's not something I need to see, and I made sure my brother didn't see it either. I hope he didn't see it, but there's no guarantee. But God was showing me that it was in that moment I got introduced to lust, in the spirit of lust in that moment. I got exposed to it, and it had legal right to attach to me. Not only that, but also adultery and fornication along with it. So in this weekend, I'm looking at how it got attached to me, and it started putting everything into perspective of how I ended up getting into masturbation, even how how I've had lustful thoughts for years, and how hard it was just to get rid of them. But God even took it further and showed me and pointed to me that this was a generational curse. And it started out with my great grandfather. So if you're wondering how did it start out with my great grandfather, this is how it went. My great grandfather was in love with someone else and wanted to marry her. But he simultaneously was having a fling with my great grandmother. Now, he broke it off with my great grandmother, and of course, she wasn't having it, so she went to his father and lied, saying that she was pregnant. Because his father didn't want him to shame the family, he told my great grandfather that he was going to marry my great grandmother, and so that's exactly what happened. And their marriage was, from what I understood, was horrible. I don't recall meeting them. Well, my great grandfather, I never met him. But my great grandmother, I have no recollection. I don't think I ever met them. But from what my mom told me, their marriage was horrible. And my great grandmother was also abusive as well. And we found out, of course, this was like years later, that my great grandfather did step out in the marriage and had a child with the woman that he actually wanted to marry and be with. Because there was a rumor that there was another woman out there that looked just like my grandmother, which was his daughter. So there was, in that moment, we see infidelity that popped up, the adultery that popped up. Going into my grandmother, I have no idea if my grandfather was the one or not the one. I have not talked to her in that regard, in that instance, dealing with it. But it was in her second marriage, she stepped out in the marriage. It was not confirmed, but based off of how things lined up, we believe my grandmother stepped out in the marriage. So that from my great grandfather to my grandmother, and then going into my grandmother's kids, which the lineup of my mom and her siblings, my mom even stepped out in the marriage. Now, I know a little bit more of my mom's story, that she met the one back on a playground when she was like single digit age, like him and her locked eyes, like love at first sight. And they really were meant for each other, and they dated twice, but my grandmother kept breaking them up. And it was like traumatically horrific on how my grandmother actually broke them up. Not only did that happen, because of it, my mom ended up marrying my dad, who my father was actually abusive also. When my mom stepped out, she was actually on her way to divorce, and my parents were legally separated. And that was when she stepped out in the marriage, because she had the intention of moving on from him. Still, they were still technically married. Then, because of that, she still committed adultery in the marriage, which eventually they did divorce, because my dad was still abusive, and they just would not work out. And above all, he didn't want God in marriage. So, so my parents did eventually divorce. But because of my mom's actions, she continued on the generational curse that took place. So from my great grandfather to my mom, the generational curse that took place is where God had placed someone as the one. The one who was like literally the love of your life, you do not end up with them and end up marrying someone else. And there ends up being adultery that takes place because that person didn't end up with with the love of their life the way that they were meant to. That happened with my great grandfather. I don't know about my grandmother, but when it came to my mom, that's exactly what happened. And that actually followed through with me. When there was that workplace romance with the gentleman, I gotta say, he's the one. Now, whatever happens going into the future, I place it all in God's hands. I trust him. But because of how he and I did come together and how he and I did connect and ended up not being able to be together, it did open the door up for adultery to come through. Now, the physical aspect of adultery didn't come through, but the emotional adultery did come through. So in some way aspect, I can say on my part, I wasn't married, but it did come up. I can't say everything on his part. But because it did happen, it propelled that generational curse to come through. God had to show and reveal all this to me because this was the thing he wanted me to break free from. He wanted me to not just break free from the spirits attached to lust, but also break the generational curse that was on me so that it would not continue through my future generations. So it was in this one weekend. So God's revealing everything that's coming up, how things got in, and why there has been a stronghold in my life when it came to like sexual sin together. So on like the final day, I had to write out all the spirits dealing with sexual sin to cast out, because not just is there fornication, lust, and adultery, there's also sexual abuse on the family line. And because there's sexual abuse, there's incest that goes along with it as well. So I had to deal with them, and then I also had to cross-represent with any other evil spirit and even any other demon that could be attached to the sexual sins, and anything that could like easily slip in. So like, for example, whenever I get angry, lust has a very easy chance of coming into the mix, which I did experience that a lot when I was angry at the guy, at this gentleman that I used to work with. So I had to deal with anything that could cross-reference. So for lust, it tended to attach when I was angry and even when I was walking in pride. So I had to cast them out too. So I casted out anything that could lead to it, even if it meant I was dealing with rejection. I had to cast out rejection. Anything that was dealing with self-pride, self-confidence, I had to cast that out. Anything that could give lust a window back into my life, I had to cast out. So I remember after I did all of that, which that really was a spiritual battle in of itself. The Lord gave me a dream showing that I had been delivered from it. God put me through this so that he could deliver me from it so that I could be free. And that's exactly what happened. And so he gave me a dream that showed that I actually did get free from it. And in the dream, there was like this, like obstacles, kind of weird stuff going on. But then at the end of the dream, there's this guy who's telling me that he loves me, that he wants to spend the rest of his life with me. All I had to do was just choose to go with him. And I have someone who I was going through all the obstacles and struggles with the entire part of the dream. And she's telling me, don't do it. Don't follow him. Don't go near him. Stay with us and don't pay attention to what he's doing. Look forward, don't acknowledge him. And even though he was what I wanted, I listened to the instruction of the woman I was going through all the obstacles with. That at the end of the dream, as I'm walking out of the building, I literally get to go free out of this building. Nothing following me, nothing attached to me. I'm literally free. Because I'm literally free in this, I woke up knowing exactly what it meant, that I have been delivered from sexual sin. So even when I went through masturbation in the past, I got freed from it. Lust, I got freed from. I broke the ties of adultery in any form to come through. I was literally free, and I actually got to experience just like my mind being free and my emotions being free as well. And to keep up with that freedom, I've made sure I don't watch or listen to anything that can put me into lustful habits, lustful behavior. I don't want to give the enemy a way back into my life. So I get free. Because I got free, God actually opened up like, now that you got free, I want you to help others get free too. So it actually propelled me to write a show based off of sexual sin and basically just exposing it. The name of the show is called In Search for Purity. And I'm still writing this show out, which I'm excited for when the day I get to actually have this show up on TV. But I gotta finish writing it first. But yeah, because I got free, it opened up the door for me to help other people get free. And I'm actually glad that I get to help people in that way. Then, as we're going into the new year, before we go into the new year, in December of 2025 last year, my best friend actually gets saved, which was one of the greatest gifts I got out of the whole year. Don't get me wrong, I've had quite a few victories and triumphs, but something about when my best friend got saved, it really, I had nothing but joy and excitement because I had been praying for her for years, especially when God was giving me revelation on the next steps of where my life was going to go. And he was giving them to me in 2024 and 2025. So while I was still in suffering, he was preparing me to come out of suffering and was giving me the heads up beforehand. And because I knew about what was going to happen next, I started praying for my best friend and I was praying for her soul, praying for her salvation, because whenever my life starts taking off in the direction where God wanted to go, if she's going through something and I'm not able to get to her, I want her to at least know who Jesus is so that she can call on his name whenever she would need him. And so that was a very strong and frequent prayer that I had within the last 2 years. I've always prayed before, but that prayer became more strong, more evident, like within these past 2 years. So, and the funny thing is, she got saved watching me go through all the things that I was going through. But I remember the day when she got saved and she had to leave to go see family. I was praising, and I remember saying, "Satan, you can't have her, and you never will." So I was celebrating because now my best friend, who's been more of a sister to me, is now my sister in Christ also. So ending 2025 it was like that high note, and everything that I've been through, it was like the perfect way to end the year. The the obstacle that actually came up after that was that we found out that we had to leave our home because her father wanted to work on something in that area of the house. So we had to find somewhere else to move. The problem was we both weren't working, so by this point she had to quit her job because of all the issues that came up there, and it became harder for her to continue to work. She was even also in school while while she was still in school. I'm still working on a business, and I'm growing in the ways where God wants me to be active in my business. So that even then, starting a YouTube channel, which I wasn't consistent with until now, but there was a whole struggle of where we want to live, especially the fact that both weren't making money, and we kind of came under spiritual attack in our friendship while we were going through this. We're still going strong in our friendship, and we've learned how to fight spiritually in our friendship as well. That even now we are not in our new home, but we're in a temporary residence, which God had warned us that we were going to be staying somewhere intermittent in the intermediary. um, and that's exactly where we are. We both would not have expected that we were going to be back in our home state, Delaware. But that's ended where we are. But it's while we're here, we're also growing as well. Now, going further to show in areas where I've grown, this is leading up till now. I've even had to, with the gentleman, because he did eventually get married, I had to apologize to his wife. And because I have no money and have no real phone, so I can't really call or talk to people over the phone, I had to get real creative and sent a letter to address to her, apologizing for my actions, which is the one of the greatest ways to end something like what I've went through, because I needed to make things right, and in it I got to just also be fully free from the situation as well. Whatever God has for me, He has for me, and it will show up later on in life. But even now, I'm not just dealing with the things that I need to work on with me. I'm also still growing in my business. I'm still making Christian streetwear. I'm not just writing one show, but I'm writing a couple of, like two, well, another show. I have a couple other ideas, and I also have a movie that I want to start writing also. Like, fully write. I already wrote out the idea, but to fully write out. And so there's just so much more that I am working on while still being consistent on this YouTube channel. So moving forward, God has been with me. I may not have been in the ideal life situation that I would have wanted to be in, but God has still been good and sovereign the entire time. He's been covering me and my best friend and has kept us together. We still continue to grow, and He's even preparing us for our destinies and what He created us for, which is even great to see and witness. But with everything that I have been through these past 5 years, there were definite lessons that I came out learning, which I know will help many of you who are listening in your life, in your walk with the Lord, in your walk to develop holy fear of the Lord. So while this is the end of my testimony, the next episode is going to be based on obedience. What obedience is and what it looks like when you live a life of obedience. So, thank you again for listening to my testimony. I hope that you got to learn a lot, and I look forward to you learning more about the lessons I've learned and that you get to apply them to your life. So, until next time, have a good one.